All the pretty girls stand up. All the pretty boys stand up.
Pretty boys in the building.
Sway. This right here is my sway. Sway. All the girls are on me. Damn. Everybody pay attention. This right here is my pretty boy sway. 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 Girls on my pretty sway. Girl, screw my name. Sway. Pretty boy sway. Pretty boy sway. 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 Girl, on my pretty boy sway. Girl, screw my name. Pretty boy sway.
Soldier.
Get out the way. Pretty boy coming through.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another stream with Swaggle Haas. Very special Tuesday night stream we have going on tonight. I'm going to be joined by a couple very special guests once again that I'm looking forward to talk to. And we got a lot of news stories to cover. So a lot of good topics. Felt like it'd be a good time to just do a stream and hang out with these gentlemen here tonight. It's like sometimes you have the news stories to go over that are like, you maybe want to talk about them in a video, but it doesn't feel video worthy. And maybe you just don't need to like do a full thing for it. So it's kind of nice to like do a stream and take some of that pressure off and then have, us just have more of a panel discussion with some of the people here on the channel. So I'm definitely looking forward to this one tonight. Of course, we got to do a couple of housekeeping things. We got to say hello to everybody in the chat. Thank you guys so much for hopping in with me and joining me here. We got Brenton Baker in the chat. I love foils. They were so beautiful. To the moon. Yeah, we are definitely going to get into the foil talk tonight. That's for sure. We're definitely going to talk a lot about the foils, and it should be interesting. Again, like I know maybe my tinfoil hat thing is memeing a little bit on this stuff, and I think that foils are cool. I definitely there's a place for them, but obviously at New York Comic Con, it seems like every other book is going to be a foil. So it's interesting to talk about that and see like sort of the oversaturation. And with my guests tonight, which actually are Daniel Wu and Sean Chen. Sean got his career start in the 90s, like at that time, like he literally entered the market right when it sort of crashed. So I'm going to pick his brain quite a bit about, if he remembers sort of the 90s foil crash and what he thinks about all the foil stuff. So we're definitely going to get into that tonight. Are we going to get foil sanity number one? I should probably put foil on my sanity comic book. I think if I put foil on my comic book, I probably would have quadrupled my sales. At least that's what it appears to be, So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, based on Ricardo giving me a new membership to my channel, maybe I won't have to rely on foil sales to keep things going, because I really appreciate your membership. And before I get to the rest of the comments, of course, let me just do a little bit more housekeeping, guys, and do a little self-promotion. Of course, I have channel memberships now. I got channel memberships. If you guys don't know what they are, you can go over here, hit the join button, check it out. I got a whole video explaining what they are. You got the different tiers here. I got some emojis that you can pick up. I got, some other perks that are involved in being a member of the channel. So definitely go check it out. I mean, it's a fun way to sort of support me, get to have some, cool little emotes and stuff like that. And be like Ricardo right here, supporting me. Otherwise, I'm going to put foil in every single comic book I sell from here on out. Okay, that's just what's going to happen. All right, let's check in here with the rest of the people here. We got Friends with Issue, Comic Books Issues. What's going on, man? Hello. Good to see you. It's cold and dark, and I'm scared. We'll turn on the light, man. We got GT Key Comic with the thumbs up. GT Key, thanks for stopping in. It's good to see you, buddy. We got Maya Blue here, Swaggy NYCC madness. Yeah, there's a lot of madness. I mean, we're gonna talk about some of the stuff. We're gonna talk about some of the other stories, and then we're gonna talk about some of the other interesting sort of news announcements that have come out for NYCC. So we'll definitely get into that for sure. We got Planet Arizona Comic Books here. Live stream comic books. What up, Mickey? What up, Planet Arizona? Thanks for hopping in. It's good to see you, man. We got Journo in the chat here. Juicy nuggets with swag tonight. Yeah, we'll see if it gets juicy. Well, we'll stir in the pot a little bit here with all this talk. We got NuckTech99 in the chat. What's up, y'all? We got Pasternak in the chat. We got Why Not Comics in the chat. We got Richard in the chat. We got a bunch of people in the chat. We're gonna get into it. We'll definitely answer some of your guys' questions, when we get to them, guys. If you do have questions, feel free to ask, or feel free to, chime in on what you guys think about some of the stories and stuff as we kind of get into it. Let me go back to this cam here as I bring on our guests. Well, I see our special guests in the background here joining us on the stream, making a triumphant return to the Swaggle Haas YouTube channel. I got two gentlemen here. I got Sean Chen and Daniel Wu. Sean and Daniel, it's good to see you guys again.
What's happening?
What's going on? Tuesday night, I feel like you guys have been on every single YouTube channel in the entire YouTube space in the last few weeks.
I tried.
Oh,
Sean's a little bit
a little weird.
Okay, let me go out and come back in.
All
You
right.
sound like a mech.
Yeah. But you guys have definitely been doing the rounds, Daniel.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, which I think it's interesting because I definitely want to give you guys a little shout out of why you've been doing the rounds. I mean, we've been talking about this before on one of the other streams, but we're gonna talk about it again. A lot of people selling comic books at New York Comic Con. I think Sean's going to be at New York Comic Con, and you guys got your Kickstarter here for EVERMIND, which we got to give a shout out here. You guys put in a lot of work into this, a creator-owned project, creator-driven project. And one of the things I respect so much about this is like how much heart is put into it, and not to get a little ahead of the conversation. I think maybe my playfulness with some of the slap of foil on it conversation that we're going to get into is what I respect is how much effort and work is put into something like this versus just putting the foil on it. Although I feel like if you guys put foils on this cover, you'd be able to add a 0 to your 27,649. So
maybe it's coming. Maybe, once we hit our second round of Kickstarter, we'll do a foil version.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, how's this been going? I mean, how's the campaign trail been so far for you?
It's been incredible. I mean, like, we had set a goal for 10,000, and now we're at 27,649, which is almost 3 times more than we expected. So, this is a huge experiment for us, and we weren't sure how it was going to go. We had a feeling that it might go well, but I think obviously, with Sean's pull and all that, I think that we've definitely got a lot of people's interest in what this project's about, and everyone wanted to support it. And I think it also came at a good time,
right?
Where this is kind of a new thing where we're kind of cutting out the middleman and going straight to the fans and followers and readers to see what they want to see, and not decided by a publisher or an executive or somebody else, right? Let the people who are going to consume it decide if they want to see it.
Yeah. Hey, Sean, how's it been so far doing all the promotion and seeing all the numbers come in the backers? How's it been for you?
Is my audio okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, it's good now.
It's weird because I spent a lot of time learning to draw, and then just kind of in the past couple of years spent a lot of time learning how to write. And then I thought I was done after that, but then this whole promotional thing is like the third leg to this stool. And I think it might be the most important one of all, which is I think is one I'm going to struggle with because I'm not really like a forward-facing guy. Like as an artist, you kind of draw in your basement in your underwear, but now I gotta actually get out there and push the book, which is kind of unusual, but
yeah,
getting used to it.
Yeah, well, the art is amazing. I mean, the project is awesome. Definitely go support these types of projects, guys. You gotta. If I know everybody likes a good foil every now and again, and we're going to talk about some foils and stuff, but it's not so much the publishers or retailers' fault that there's so many foils at New York Comic Con. It's just that's the easiest thing to sell, and if you want to see amazing creator-driven work, you got to support these guys.
Is that really the hot topic of this Comic Con? Is the foil cover?
Man, Oh, we guys, everyone in the chat, we got to catch up Daniel to this. Okay, we're gonna get into it. That's a good segue. But hey, we're on 251 backers right now. By the end of the stream, let's at least get a few more. At least get a few more. I put the link in the chat. Definitely go check this out, guys. EVERMIND. We're gonna talk about it a little bit more, but I know everybody is itching to get into this conversation. So let me give you a little like TLDR, Daniel and Sean. Okay. You know, you have New York Comic Con coming up, right? And you know, at New York Comic Con, there's you got to have artists got to be there. You know, Sean, you got to have prints to sign, and you got to have a booth and all that, and retailers are going to be there and everything. And at this particular Comic Con, there are what they call comic book exclusives, meaning like I'm going to bring a Supergirl comic book here, and you can only get it at this booth, and this is an exclusive, and it becomes like this chase, and it becomes like this kind of FOMO, you know, it's a race to sort of get it, and then everyone tries to flip it on eBay, and it's this whole kind of crazy market that sort of happens with it. But the funny thing about this particular Comic-Con is that there's over 200 of these exclusives at this Comic-Con, which, just to put in perspective, I mean, that is a ton. So meaning like everybody there is trying to sell as much as they can for these exclusives. And to boot, to the 200, it's like every other one of these is like a cover with a foil on it, or a reprint of a Spawn #1 looking cover, or a Spider-Man cover, and just slap a foil on it. And so it's sort of this, like, if you're familiar with the gimmicks of the 1990s, where everything had foil on it, you know, this is the sort of like quick sort of cash grab. At least that's what it feels. I don't mean to like disrespect, you know, the retailers that are sort of putting in work and trying to, you know, support their business and stuff. But that's certainly what it feels like when you have over 200 of them in the comic book market.
But we've seen this before, right? History before had done this similar thing, and then it caused kind of a crash in the comic book market, right? So
yeah,
are we smarter now, and it's not going to that's not going to happen, or what's different about it this time that makes it sustainable?
Well, let me ask this, Sean. I mean, your background is that you got into the comic book industry kind of around the 90s. Like, I don't know, were you like at that foil time, or were you just slightly after that?
I came in right after the death of Superman. So yeah, I think that kind of kicked it all off. But yeah, I was there, and yeah, it just seemed like it was new and novel back then, and I think people started doing it more and more, and I completely get it. I understand it, and they look cool. And then my thing is, like, if you don't agree with it, just don't buy it, right?
Yeah.
So, right. So, but for the people who want it, make it for them.
Yeah.
I mean, is there something wrong with that way of thinking, though?
I don't think there is. And again, it's like, I don't want to be like too, you know, negative on it or whatever. I just think it's people are going to make what the market wants. Right. And if the market wants to just buy a Batman logo with a shiny blue cover, like, and not really care what this comic book even is, I mean, I guess that's okay. But I think maybe I get a little bit disheartened where it's like, if the story that comes out of, say, a New York Comic Con is like, hey, did you guys get the Wonder Woman shiny cover? Like, that sort of is a lot of noise to cut through to learn about a cool project like EVERMIND, or a cool, even like a new Marvel comic book that, you know, they used to like have these announcements at these cons where they'd be like, oh, hey, here's the new whatever X-Men series, and here's the creative team, and that's the story. And I think maybe that plays its way a little bit into publishers choosing to do this instead of choosing to sort of invest in storytelling. Or maybe I'm being too much of an idealist.
Actually, I don't even know how did that cause the downfall of our industry. Like, I should know this stuff, but I don't really. But how did that hurt us?
I think it just I think that with the sort of what happened in the 90s when all these comics were coming out was there's a big speculation market that came, right? Everybody thought, okay, if I buy the Death of Superman, or if I buy the shiny Spider-Man cover, this is going to be really valuable one day. And I think people just, you know, to their own fault, like they just went too hard. Like they bought too much, and publishers overprinted and sold it so hard that I actually think the fans and the collectors just burnt out. You know, it's one of those things where it's like, you can make a couple impulse buys here and there, and you can kind of get into it. But if you get
everybody's doing it, right?
Yeah, and if you get oversold, I just think that like that's something that you just get a disillusioned with like comics after that, right? Where it's like you just feel like it's sort of the Beanie Baby thing. It's like it got too white hot, and everyone bought Beanie Babies, and then one day it was like, this is stupid, and they just all walked away.
Right.
And that was one of the sort of the issues. Now I could be misremembering it. I don't know if people in the chat feel differently about how exactly it unfolded, but
I kind of missed that whole era because like I remember, I had a lot of first edition comic books, and then I went to Hong Kong for several years, and I came back and my mom wanted me to get rid of a bunch of stuff. So I went to bring it to the comic book store to sell back, and they're like, these are not even worth pennies. I'm like, what happened? And then the guy explained it to me. Like I completely missed that whole era, but I didn't realize that had happened. It just collapsed in just a matter of a couple of years.
Yeah. And I think, and maybe there's got to speak out of both sides of my mouth here. Like, it's not really the publisher's problem, right? Like the publisher is in the market of making a comic, and whatever happens to collectors is not really their concern. So it's kind of more on the collectors in that sense. But, at the same time, it's like, it is what it is. It does exist. And for better or for worse, there's sort of this like, there's a reason why when you buy a comic book, you put it in a bag and board, because you're trying to protect it and preserve it.
Yeah.
And so implicit in that is this idea that like, well, I don't want it to like, get damaged and go down in value and stuff. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing in this market, but I don't know, Sean, what do you think? Like, did you have stuff where you were ever like asked to do, like, how did that work back in the day? Like when they asked you to just do a cover, was it just like, oh, we'll put a medal on it after the fact?
Well, actually, I think we have something that's connected to this campaign that Carl's putting up. My very first comic was Raya and the Future Force #9, and there is, like they're everywhere, and they're pretty much worth nothing now. But there is like the Rye Gold, which I remember everyone chasing, and that's something that the publisher kind of did on their own, and they told me that's coming. And then I was signing a lot of them. It's like the same cover, except the logo and some parts of it are just in that gold paint. And I don't know if that's considered a foil or whatever, but it just makes it kind of exclusive. So I'm just wondering, like, is this the thing where in order to get one of these, you have to buy like 25 of the regular ones? Is that how it works?
It's not that. It's just that all these are at certain tables, right? So, there are people out there that genuinely want them, and generally just say, hey, this is a cool thing to have at a Comic-Con. But, there's a whole market of people who obviously are going to rush, go to all the tables, figure out which ones are going to sell for 3 times as much on eBay.
So here's another question, though. Do you have to officially register your exclusive item with the convention?
I don't know if you have to, but for instance, this page that I'm on is New York Comic Con's website, and they have them listed. So, but I know for certain that they don't have everyone listed. So maybe these ones maybe they ask you if you have a table there.
Or if you have money. I mean, you can pay for that exclusive listing, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, let me bring on another special guest that we have here in the back. Ladies and gentlemen, clap in the chat for Gene Yang.
Oh, wow.
Good to see you, Gene. Nice to meet you.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me.
Coming out, Gene.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys don't know Gene is a exceptional talent, creator of American-Born Chinese. You see right there. If you guys saw on Disney Plus, if you guys got a chance to watch this show, maybe you can fill us in if there will be a season 2. But I have to assume there's going to be a season 2. Right? You don't have to say.
We're still waiting.
Yeah,
we are still waiting. We are still waiting.
You got to be tight-lipped here.
Either way, all the strikes are getting in the way of us getting an answer. And that's Daniel right in the corner there, except he's blonde. He's blonde and he's a magic monkey
in the right-hand corner. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, right up there.
Yeah.
How was working on this project together, really quick, before we dive into this foil combo?
I mean, if Gene wasn't such a diva, it would have been so much easier. But no,
dude, it was only 1 foot massage every night. I don't know what Daniel's complaining about.
It was actually awesome to have Gene around on set because like when we shoot movies, usually the writers are not around, but it was cool to have Gene on set, but also like because you could ask him things about character and blah 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 while we're doing it, but also just he was so excited to see his comic being made into a show. It was kind of cool to watch him kind of experience that on the day to day and see things that he drew and wrote like 20 years ago almost, right?
Yeah,
Come to life. And just like I enjoyed watching your slowly absorbing the reality of that every day. It was cool.
Was crazy. Yeah, it was a crazy experience.
Yeah. It was very, very cool. It was really exciting, hearing about the show sort of come together, at least from my perspective from afar. But congratulations. It turned out excellent. And then you also have wrote some Shang-Chi comics recently, which was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, that was really fun
other comic work stuff? Are you going to be putting any foils together for New York Comic Con?
You know, I don't know if I ever had foil on anything I've ever written. Yeah, I mean, I was not. Yeah, like Sean, you got into comics really young, right? Like, what were you, early 20s, late teens?
Yeah, for a long time. But you seem to have gotten a lot farther because I think what you've done is sort of like the gold standard for me. Like that's sort of like the North Star, just to get that Gene Yang clout where you can have something you created go all the way into other media and get all the way on the television. So
that's nice of you to say. I don't know if I totally agree with you, but that's really nice of you to say.
Well, you know, when I found out, my wife was reading to me the people who backed the project, just reading off these names, see if I knew any. And when she read your name, I made her read it again. And I looked at it and I was like, I did a happy dance, and she didn't know what. I mean, she's like, you know, this guy's a peer, but he probably would follow this, and he knows Daniel. And I was like, well, it still thrilled me. And then every time I try to convince someone to buy into EVERMIND, I always say like Gene Yang, you know, he bought into it. So yeah, so it just meant the world to me. So thank you so much for supporting.
No, my pleasure, and thanks for sending me the issues early. I read the first one so far. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was
cool.
really fun ideas. I do want to know though what you have against Walt Disney though.
Well, it just seems like, you know, if you watch YouTube a lot, you only get the negative side of Disney because, you know, the hot takes and the whatever bleeds leads. But yeah, it just seems like it's very topical now as far as YouTube is concerned. So
Yeah.
It's very interesting. But go ahead, Gene.
Oh, I was gonna say it does seem like you're kind of using it's a Disney analog, right? You're using a Disney analog and you're kind of tying it into the military. So it's sort of like it feels there's something very American about that, combining fun and the military. Yeah, fun
and all kind of like American decadence in some way.
Yeah.
You know, like you go and I really like how in the book, in the comic books, that you have the same mechs that work in Bobo World, but then also work in the underworld. It's kind of really cool that they live both worlds and they both see the two different sides of humanity, like the innocent side, but also the dark side.
Yeah. Really fun ideas.
Well, it's interesting, actually. I was going to save this talk for later, but I actually think maybe this is a good segue into it, since we're kind of covering news here at New York. Gene, are you going to go to New York Comic Con? Are you?
I am. I'll be there on Saturday. That's
okay. Or
are you there to promote? What are you doing there?
So I have a couple panels and a couple signings. Cool. Mostly, I have a book coming out in November. I'm doing a series called Books of Clash, which is based on the Clash of Clans video games, and the second volume of that is coming out in November. So I'll be talking about that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you're gonna be there, right, Sean?
Oh yeah, I'll be there. Okay. Not at a table, but I'll be around Bernard Chang a lot. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I'm sure I'll run into you because I think you guys are friends, right? You and Bernard.
Yeah, we worked together on the Monkey Prince. So he's a really cool guy. Really, also strange in a really good way. You know,
like
that's why it's my friend.
Yeah. What are you talking about?
We did this Zoom we did this Zoom interview, and then he brought up a fake steering wheel and set up his background so he looked like he was driving the whole time he was talking.
That's a
It was,
brilliant
just,
idea.
it was just like a fun thing that he was going to do.
He's a clown, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least he didn't fart on that stream. I mean, he's known for doing that. So
Oh, is that a thing?
yeah,
Okay.
oh yeah, almost in every interview. So,
All right. I'll watch out for that.
but that's weird, like how small our industry is, because as a creator, I think there's only about 800 of us, and sooner or later you'll know everybody. It's like you work with Bernard, you also work with Daniel, and I actually in all the time that I worked have never really met you before. So this is
Yeah, I was
kind of
surprised to hear that both of you have been in the business for so long.
Yeah.
And hadn't actually run into each other at any of these conventions or meetups.
Yeah.
Well, I think your work is very positive, and and mine kind of swings very like typical superhero stuff where it's just like a lot of toxic fighting. So maybe that kind of separates us a little bit, but it's just genre.
Yeah, I do think. I mean, there are two sides of the American comic book industry right now, right? There's the more traditional side, which comes out of superhero comics, and then there's this side that comes out of the book market. Like my main publisher for Second is actually a part of Macmillan, which is a traditional book publisher. So I think a lot of us who used to be in like indie comics, like Raina Telgemeier and Kazu Kibuishi and Ben Hackey, we kind of came up from that book market. And the two industry, I feel like the two halves just operate really differently. Like it's really interesting. Even the whole like creator rights conversation is very different in those two different halves.
And
really?
I can say the pay is quite different too. I mean, you guys seem to be doing really well in that area.
Well, so I think when you're starting off on the traditional book side, I think if you break it down by page rate, it's actually a lot lower. But then you own it, right? You own it. So if your book does well, it's different. And I do think what you're doing with EVERMIND actually kind of fits right in the middle, right? Like ownership wise, it's more like the traditional book side of things.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. Like by doing this Kickstarter and doing all this, you kind of cut out the people that are the gatekeepers usually.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so you allow us to go from creators directly to the readers, and I like that connection better.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I've been in the entertainment industry my whole career, is like getting permission from the gatekeepers to do what you want to do, right? And so to be able to just do it and send it off directly to the readers, that's like an amazing thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you all ever talk about doing it a different way, like taking it to Image or something like that? Or was it always you're going to kickstart it?
I write and I draw, and then I never really handle the business side. That's how it's always been at Marvel. So I'm kind of promoting and marketing something for the first time, which is a strange mix for me. But I don't really know enough about the business to find out where it's the best place to be. I know Kickstarter, just the fact that I have a relationship with, creator to consumer is very direct. Mm-hmm. And I can give them an experience that they can't get from the direct market or comic book store. So that much I know. I don't know exactly beyond that what Carl has planned, but I trust he's on top of it.
Mm.
Yeah, Carl Choi, our publisher at 24/7 Comics, he's really, I mean, he was in the music industry, he was in a whole bunch of different industries, so he uses all those different experiences to try and streamline the process in some ways, and that's what I like about him, because he thinks outside the box a lot of times. So I think he always planned to attack this in a very non-traditional way.
I see. So it's almost like you're using this non-traditional way as an alternative to even like an Image or a Dark Horse or something like that.
Yeah.
I see. Awesome.
I think that this is becoming, I mean, it's already been like the crowdfunding model has always been sort of, there's a whole like world of comics that are very successful within this area. And to me, it's really interesting, even bringing it back to like people making foils and exclusives and stuff, and like the way that the retailer thing works, where it's like you have all these retailers who are now sort of beholden to this model. Like one of the reasons why like all these retailers are like, oh, I gotta make my own comic book and put my logo on it and put a foil and sell it at New York Comic Con, is like, this is like kind of how they make money. And like their business has been shaped to where retailer, like the retailers are sort of the customers of the publishers, and then the comic readers are the customers of the retailers. So there's like this kind of interesting way that it's set up. But where I'm going with this, as it goes to like the Kickstarter stuff, and where I feel like it continues to go, is I start to wonder, like, if you're like a retailer who has like a large audience and has a large following, and you're already talking to like writers and artists and doing this whole thing and making your own retailer cover, like why retailers wouldn't just become publishers soon, you know, and just like, I mean, if you're some of these people I think of like the true indie comics, like that you're talking about, like the TMNT, you know, those types of indies, and Brian Polito, who makes this character called Lady Death that I want to ask you guys about in a second. We're going to talk about that. But like even them, they're like creator owned IP, and they just make their own comics, and they're kind of their own retailer in a way. And I just wonder, like, I mean, it's hard to make a comic, but I don't know if you're beholden to having to sell a Spider-Man cover that you commission an artist to do. I don't know. Why just not commission that artist to make their own comic book? I don't know. Have you had any interactions with retailers and stuff? I don't know. Maybe Gene, it's different for writers, but what do you think, Sean?
Well, I guess what you're talking about is like comics the way it is now is like what they call like the B to B to C, where it's business to business and then customer. And then we can, if the customer is the end, that we can kind of just deal with them directly. Except for that access to all those great licensed characters that they have is always nice. But I think we're in a situation now where everyone's trying all sorts of things, and then I think when the dust settles, we'll know what's best. But right now is a great time for experimenting, and then we get to see what other people have done and how it worked for them.
Yeah, well, I think that the foils are going to sell very well. The reprints of old,
the people that are like diving into to quote unquote collect these, are these even like, are they tangentially involved in the comic book world, or are they really like in it, or are they just doing it for the money? It's like the sneaker world was like that too. Like when sneakers, like people didn't give a shit about the sneakers, they just wanted to resell them, right? So they would get in the lines, get the limited edition ones, and then resell them and make that money, and they cared nothing about that culture at all. Is it similar with these foil covers?
I think it's like extremely similar, and the question is, it's like, I mean, it has to be with sneakers too, right? Like probably the large majority of people still just like this stuff, but it feels like you call them like the flippers and stuff, and the people that like are just sort of in it to like get a quick buck, like
right.
Those feel more prolific. Or
so does that also anger the true collectors that are like, bro, you're not even part of this world, and you're jacking up the prices and doing all this crazy stuff?
Oh, 100%. It's like this is the juiciest of dramas in the collector world, with all this.
There, like a lot of shit talking on Reddit about that kind of stuff.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's definitely a thing, and it's tough.
Fights at Comic-Con this year?
What's that?
Is it gonna be fights at Comic-Con?
There have been. Last year at New York Comic Con, I think people in the chat remember there was actually a fight.
Oh, really? A physical fight?
Yeah. There's an artist
over trying to get stuff, or what?
So there's an artist. Her name was Peach Momoko, or is Peach Momoko. Very famous cover artist. Maybe Sean or Gene, if you know of her.
I know her stuff. I don't know if I've ever met her.
Fantastic artist.
She's right next to Bernard. So if you go visit Bernard, you'll be right there. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And the story of the Peach Momoko, this was last year at New York Comic Con. I think she basically just offered that she was going to sign unlimited amount of books, and I think she was going to charge it like nothing, or like she said like, oh, $20 and I'll sign as many things as you want. So it became like a whole thing, because secondary market, her comics sell for quite a bit of money, at least at that time they did. So there were people that were just like, drop a box, like sign it, let's go. And then there were, a bunch of people in line, and a lot of pushing and pulling, and there was some, drama with cutting and things like that. And I actually do think it broke out into like a little bit of a fist fight and stuff. And they had to like pull her away from her table, like poor girl, she got all like scared and stuff. It was
Wow.
definitely a thing. Yeah.
Oh my god, that sounds crazy.
Yeah. It's
But
definitely a wild thing. And New York Comic Con this year, I don't know what it is. It's just maybe it's because at the end of the year, this becomes kind of the last like big con for a lot of retailers to sell. So it's just sort of your like get it while you can.
It's a
Before
good
the
way to
year is out.
combat the piracy, though, because if you wanted to read any comic, you can probably very easily find it for free online.
Yeah.
These you can't, though, because these are exclusive and you really have to have the physical product. So I think it's a good counterpoint to all the piracy going on out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of the piracy thing, let me ask you guys about this. I think this is an interesting story. One that I just kind of wanted to quickly touch on. This happened like the last week. There's this artist here. He's an artist writer. His name is Brian Pulido. He created this character called Lady Death. Also has a character called Evil Ernie. But he created this character. He owns the IP outright. And there was a retailer who, shout out to Brian here with his YouTube channel because I couldn't find the picture, who did what is called a cosplay variant and took his IP and put it on this and was selling this through her like networks and whatnots and stuff. And Brian kind of put in this cease and desist with this retailer selling this stuff. And it was a whole thing. And, you know, kudos to them. They thought that they were doing something okay, that they could sort of sell this like tangentially related comic book, even though it's not quite exactly the character. It's
Were they
effectively
calling
the same.
it the same name?
So they're calling it like a cosplay variant. And this is ultimately where I want to ask you guys this question. I'm going to take you into the deep underworlds of comic book selling. Sean, close your eyes. We're going to go over to this comics elite publisher. Okay. This is the craziest stuff going on right here, but there's a big subset of comic collectors that love the risky covers, right? And they make these comic books like this one right here that is Jesse Zombie Hunter. Now, in my opinion, looks a lot like Jessica Rabbit, but not quite Jessica Rabbit, but kind of writing this line of in the Disney IP world, this looks like what is that character's name? Lilo to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's massive money in this, you know. They did a Kickstarter to raise money for this, and you know, their Kickstarter was $84,000, you know. So they do the stuff, and no disrespect to Comics Elite, they have their whole business thing going on. But where I'm getting at with this is that the reason I think they've been able to sort of get away with this stuff is they call them cosplay variants. And I think the history of it was they had cosplayers sort of dress up like the character. So it was kind of like this, right? Oh, let me put a cosplayer on a cover. And then eventually it was like, well, what if we painted over the cosplayer a little bit? You know, what if we added some digital artwork to it a little bit, you know, and then eventually kind of morphed into this sort of thing. So I'm curious what you guys think about this, just from an IP standpoint. Here you are, you have your own Britney's and Bobos and stuff. And what do you guys think about this? Do you
Is there an actual comic in there, or is it just the? Isn't that just the cover, right?
Gene, nobody actually knows. Nobody's actually turned the cover. No, I'm just kidding. Like, yeah, there
is a comic in there.
There is apparently a comic book in there. Yeah,
I see.
Are they any good? Or are they?
Nobody knows. I don't think has anyone in the chat ever read a comic book here. I think that the publishers will joke about it as well. Oh, here you go. Here's some interior pages. They're at the very, very bottom of the Kickstarter. So
I see. Okay, so there are interior pages. I see.
Yeah, there's definitely interiors. But I don't know. It's kind of a funny thing. And like, so people doing these, like, I mean, and there's all sorts of them. You know, you can see one for like, let me see if I'll pull it up. Like, this is Jessica Rabbit, and I think I saw another one here. I mean,
but Gene brought up a really
this is not Jean Grey, but
if the interior is kind of secondary, is it really just they're just really doing it just for the cover? So it's like a baseball card, basically.
100%.
Okay.
It's the same kind of thing with the foil, right? It's like the cover is king in these things, though.
So there's no interior. I mean, it's not really for the interior, but also you get around using an artist because it's a person in a costume. So in the market wants what it wants. I'm glad that exists. If it gets to a point where this stuff is, because it's a scantily clad woman and it's a real woman rather than something that's drawn, that if people would like it more than what I do, that takes a long time and hard work to draw from scratch, then it's kind of unfortunate, but that's the way things are going. And if it goes there, then I'll have to say, like, well, it's time for me to put my pencils away, because that's a great cover. I don't think I can draw that well. But the only thing is, if people start to think that if they want drawings on covers, like they think that covers should be drawn, because you have music that's been auto-tuned, and in the beginning, auto-tune sounds kind of cool. But I think right now, people, when they hear it, it's like, oh, it just means that person can't sing. So who knows what's going to happen, because it's all emotions surrounding this stuff.
Yeah. There's been accusations that some of these covers are AI done, but people have also claimed that they're not. And that's always kind of a hot topic thing.
I mean, even if they're not AI done, AI can do something in that vein,
In that
right?
world,
Yeah, in that world. And I think there is something to I don't know. I'm going to throw this out there because I'm still trying to work out my own thoughts about this. But I do think that if AI is good at a certain kind of art, eventually the other kind of art, like something more that needs to be hand drawn, is going to become more rare and hopefully more appreciated. You know?
It's like animation.
How vinyl kind of made a comeback after digital music was everywhere,
right?
Because it became something that was more rare and therefore more appreciated.
And
So
that even happened with animation, with like people got tired of watching smooth 3D animation. Hand drawn animation came back for a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. And at least right now, I think the kind of art that most human cartoonists do when they put together an entire book, that's still pretty hard for AI to do. It's pretty hard for AI to stay consistent from one panel to the next, So I haven't seen like a comic, like a 6-issue comic book series or a graphic novel, like a 200-page graphic novel generated by AI that has that same consistency that a human can give it.
Yeah, it feels like it's still a ways away.
Yeah,
but it probably will get there. But
I don't think it'll get there for the interior. It's great for covers, though. And right now, it's great for covers from the shoulders up, and then pretty soon it'll be great for the covers for the whole body. The very last thing it'll get good at is actually doing the entire interior. That'll be a while.
Yeah, I agree. I think that'll be.
Although I recently had a meeting with a director who he storyboarded his entire movie with Midjourney, right? And it looked like that kind of level of drawing, and everything was it had a really cool tone. It was like a gothic cowboy movie or whatever. But the tone was amazing and all that stuff. And I was like, whoa, it's basically there. I mean, he prompted it to draw every single panel, but you're not too far away from it just doing the whole thing. It seems like a year or two from now, we're going to be at that point.
Oh, man.
Well, it definitely feels like, to that point, Daniel, I mean, I had some conversation with some DPs just about making lookbooks and treatments and stuff, or art directors, production designers doing stuff like using Midjourney for that seems like, I don't know if it's like a no-no or anything, but to me, it feels like it's actually a good use of this tool. Because I
think it is. If you're using it to help pitch a show or something like that, and it saves you time from doing it, but here's the problem is that guy that used to draw that is now out of a job, right?
Yeah.
So that's the issue that becomes a problem, right? But if it helps the small guy who can't afford that to get his idea out there and sell the thing, then I don't know. It's hard to say. I can't feel bad. I can't feel like that's a bad thing, but at the same time, I get it because there's people that actually did those jobs and they're now going to be out of work.
Yeah. What did you think? I don't know if Daniel, you're willing to say, what do you think of the whole having actors be scanned and then?
No, fuck that. That's not cool at all.
But what about for Bruce Willis though? I would like Bruce Willis to still have a career.
So for known people, they're going to get paid handsomely to be able to use their AI to go do that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? But for the
Yeah.
non-known people, and here's my issue with it, is because a background extra or actor, that's their way in to Hollywood, right? That's
For sure.
a lot of people's way in. So if you cut that out, that cuts out an entry point for actors to get into the business and get experience. You know what I mean? Like there are many A-list actors out there that spent a few years doing background work, right? And they learn the ropes by hanging around sets and doing all that kind of stuff all day long. And maybe it was totally different than what they learned from acting school, because that was theory and stage and blah, blah, blah. And then they learned film craft on the set by, being a background actor, right? And if you cut that out, that cuts out an opportunity for people to come up the scale, right? And so therefore it cuts off an entry point. And so I'm totally against that. As a director, I also go, well, that'd be great, because sometimes directing background actors is a real big pain in the ass, right? Like they never can do the same thing at the same time, right? But for me as a human being, I'm totally against that. Against AI as background actors. But for like an actor to make them look younger or to make them look older or to do that with permission and they're still getting paid their salary, I'm totally fine with that. That's using it as a tool there, but not as a replacement.
Yeah. It's good that it kind of came to the conversation, it came to light in some way, because I don't know, for a long time, like it was kind of being done, not at the same level, but like, when you watch like Lord of the Rings and you see that like army battle, I mean, it was copy paste, right?
Sure. Or like a crowd scene at a football game, you can't hire 50,000 extras, so you got to put them in, cut and paste them. But a few hundred of them are real. Like even in American Born Chinese, that end scene at the high school football game, we actually had like hundreds of people sitting in the stands there because we probably couldn't afford the CGI to pop them in that way.
Yeah, I guess the issue is like, at least if they're an American Born Chinese and they get copy pasted in a stands, that's one thing. But then if you keep, we got all the footage and the tools and the plugins for those crowds, and then we're going to use that in the next
their project, show, right? Then not pay those people for that. That's messed up. I think that's messed up.
Yeah.
If it's used as a way to like not pay people for their work, then I think that's not cool.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one, now that I have you guys and we're talking EVERMIND and all that, I want to go from one dystopian topic to the other one. Did you guys see this thing? Did you see the Lex Fridman, Mark Zuckerberg conversation?
No, I haven't yet. Was this new?
Oh yeah, this came out 12 days ago. I don't know if you guys know Lex Fridman. He does a podcast and stuff, but he had Mark Zuckerberg on, and they had this. So here they are. They're wearing your Neuralink right here, and they're having this whole podcast is them talking in the virtual world.
That podcast is oh my god, that's crazy.
Yeah, so they did so there you see him. This is his virtual podcast, and then eventually him and Mark Zuckerberg, essentially they're on the telephone together, right? But they're doing it in different places, but they did their whole podcast in their metaverse room. And I don't know, this just came out, and a lot of the metaverse stuff is happening. It just reminded me of like all the things in EVERMIND that I think are really topical and interesting. And even
so that's the image on the far left is not him. That's like a computer animation of him. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then they're both in two different places, but they put them together in one shot as if they're doing the podcast together. But then I guess because they have the goggles on, they feel like they are talking to each other, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like if you saw the first time they put on the metaverse mask, like the first time Mark Zuckerberg unveiled it, it was like, it looked like a Nintendo Wii. Like if you know, like those figures, right? Like it's very, very kitschy, cartoony. And then all of a sudden it's like this level of fidelity,
That's crazy.
Crazy. Yeah, I bring it up because of obviously with EVERMIND and stuff, but also at New York Comic Con, there's this company called Vivi, and they do digital collectibles and digital comic books. And the funny thing is that they're at this con, they're for the first time ever doing a physical comic book, which is like, it feels like they're going backwards as a company, which is really funny. But I just feel like, soon you'll have your digital spaces, right? We're all going to have our Neuralink set up, and just communicate in there. I don't know. What do you think, Sean? Have you been paying attention to the metaverse and doing EVERMIND?
How fast we're moving, because like you said, I think the original version they look like little cartoon characters with no legs, and then now that was so laughable that they kind of laughed the metaverse just off the stage, and then to come back with this, it's just all of a sudden alive and then 10x more realistic, and like that's something to get excited about, and that was a very short amount of time when that happened, so it's kind of moving very very fast, very scary. So, and that's one of the themes in this book, is how the scientist in EVERMIND, he did something huge and groundbreaking, not because the world needed it, but because he did it because he could, and he did it because he needed to become famous or just achieve greatness at any cost.
Right.
So I don't know what motivates what's going on with technology, but it's moving faster than we can kind of regulate.
Yeah.
I feel like
with repercussions of it.
especially with AI, like that's the conversation we're having right now, right? Because I dabble in investments and joint ventures and blah blah. Everybody is doing AI right now. Like everybody is doing it, whether it's good or not. Everyone's jumped on that boat. But with the critical mass that you have of all these people, smart people working on AI, the progress is going to be exponential like that. And so we need to have these conversations now about the rules and regulations and guidelines of how AI is going to be before it actually happens, because it's going to happen quick, and it's going to happen, and it's already going to be too late before we, we can't reel it in once it goes out there, right? So these conversations have to be had now. And a lot of people are going, well, why are we talking about this? No, AI can't do this, AI can't do that, but very soon it will be able to, right? And so that is something we have to really keep tabs on, because if we don't, it'll get really out of control. Like in this situation where it's like a podcast or whatever, it seems innocuous and harmless, but I could see in situations where it could be misused and misappropriated in a bad way, right?
Yeah.
And these are themes we talk about in EVERMIND.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big dangers is I think you just can't trust anything you see anymore. Like what happens to, video surveillance footage, or like a recording of a phone call, or a recording of anything. You just can't trust any of it anymore when AI gets.
Yeah, and think about how quickly that was. Like before, it was like you go to court and you'd have to like pull in witnesses, and then you had CCTV footage, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Evidence, and that was only a few years ago. And then now that's going to be thrown out the window because you can't tell if it's real or fake anymore, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
If I ever get caught in like some kind of torrid affair, I can always say like, well, we were never together. We were never in the same room, even though you see.
Yeah, that was Mark Zuckerberg pretending to be me. Putting on a virtual face of me.
He was wearing my skin.
That'll be the new like the go-to PR move. Be like, the deep fakes are out of control.
Yeah, that's right. Well, guys, I should probably go. I have an early flight tomorrow. But thank you so much for inviting. Yeah, I'm in Indiana. I'm flying to New York tomorrow, to Rochester, and then I'll be in New York City on Friday.
All right,
great.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks for coming
I look
along.
forward to seeing you on Saturday.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you.
Yeah,
Thanks
you
so
guys
much
are
for
definitely
inviting me,
connected.
and congratulations on EVERMIND. Yeah,
Thanks for backing us. Thanks for backing us. It means a lot.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, if you guys are in the chat and you're going to New York Comic Con, go pay Gene a visit.
Yep. Find me on the panels. All right, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, let's take a look here. Let's go back to EVERMIND here. Come on. You get to guilt people. All right, we got a backer.
Okay.
Wow.
Shame everyone in the chat. We got to get these guys here to 270,000. I made the joke with Daniel Sean earlier, but I'm going to repurpose my joke. Was that, if you just put foil on all your covers,
I got some Reynolds wrap.
you'd have a 0 right next to this 27,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Or we do what you did with the flamethrower. Like, I was wondering, where did you get a flamethrower?
I know a guy. I just,
Okay.
you live here in LA, and you just you phone a producer friend and you say, hey, do you have a fire guy? And within seconds, they of course text you a number. And I don't know if you've ever seen that movie Tropic Thunder. you know, like
Yeah.
Danny McBride's
Danny
character,
McBride,
where he's
yeah.
just like a little overzealous with all the explosive stuff. Like this guy that came to my house and he was literally like carbon copy of Danny McBride. Like he was
Those guys, like I always talk to those guys on set, and they always have like black fingers because they're always
oh yeah.
making bombs and making squibs and all that stuff. So their fingertips are like just with gunpowder on them all the time. It's kind of crazy. I don't even know how to get through airport security with those swab things.
Yeah. They're definitely overzealous. And yeah, he said he was like, he brought over 6 different options, and he was just like, yeah, like, you can have this one, you put the backpack on, and this will shoot like a fire hose stream of it. And it's like, I'm at my house, and I'm like, no, I think I'm good. I'm just going to light some comic books on fire. We don't need to go all crazy. But
You should have got the Elon Musk one.
yeah, I should have. But now I think it's a merchandise opportunity. But yeah, for context, Daniel, in case you didn't know, I made a commercial for my comic book when I eventually came out with it. And a lot of very inside baseball comic collector jokes in there. People's, you guys, for instance, like you have a tier where it'll be like, okay, we're only going to have like 100 signed copies, but then who's to say that, Sean didn't slip me an extra 20,
Right.
signed copies that I'm going to sell on eBay. So there's always a clamoring for proof of destruction and proof of print count. And let me get this thing numbered. And how can I believe that this thing is rare and stuff? So I burned my extra.
Is all that a reaction to what happened in the 90s?
It is all very much that, comic book collectors care very much about, it's supply and demand, right? In secondary markets. So they care very much about the supply. And if there's this implication that, hey, we have this comic exclusive coming out and get them quick, guys, because there's only going to be whatever, pick a random cover. There's only going to be 100 copies of this cover. But the retailer has an extra 50, that they slow sell, then how do you know?
Yeah.
But
There's a lot of stuff there. It looks like also a lot of junk as well.
I guess that's the other thing too. I mean, it is a pop culture, con. So
yeah,
why am I surprised of consumerism?
Yeah,
it's kind of strange. Like some of the things that become collectible. I remember when I was young, my brother would want to get these collectible drinking glasses that have football team logos on them. I guess they were the Super Bowl football team.
Were they mugs?
It was just like a round cup,
Like
and then you get them at gas stations. So, whatever, wherever you have to go, whatever it is, anything can become collectible. And I remember being quite obsessed with those. So, I get it.
Did you sell them for good money later?
No, I think they eventually broke, but yeah, I think if you still have them, I think that's the key is just holding on to them long enough. But I mean, there's no way you can guess what's going to become collectible next. Let's say that the next place for foil covers or artwork to be on is probably going to be on the table mat at Denny's. Like that's where it's going to be, and that's where you have to go get it. And I wouldn't be surprised because right now all the greatest artwork is on covers of comics that never get opened up and read. So
It's true. Well, tell me about some of these tiers. While we got people here in the chat. What are some of these options that we got, Sean?
Well, I think the one of the more basic ones is just the PDF, and that's like $18, so you can get all 3 issues.
Nice.
And that's all digital, so you don't have to worry about for all you digital nomads. And then the next level up, you get the comic and the PDF. So that means you can have a copy to sign and put on your shelf and never touch. And then you have the PDF, which is digital, so you can't touch it either, but you can actually read it. And then I think one tier after that, I think is my favorite one, which is the artist edition, which is the entire comic in black and white. So there's no color on there, and there's more importantly, no word balloons. So that way you can see all the black and white artwork in all of its glory with, all the backgrounds from corner to corner that I draw that usually gets covered up by word balloons. and that's one of my favorites. And then beyond that,
Of course, it's the artist's favorite thing. to
yeah,
just make
right.
it all
It's the there. I do the penciling and inking, and the so that way you can see all of that without having the stuff that the writer put in and the colorist, because that's usually someone else.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, there's some tiers. That the most important thing, the most valuable thing of all, is that it's CGC and it has Daniel's signature on it. I'm not sure which one that is, but that's the one they get.
Oh, there it is, right here. CGC. Daniel, did you know about CGC at all?
Yes,
before?
sir. I remember Carl asking, how many am I willing to sign? He was asking me what my max was. I'm like, 50 is no big deal. Do you guys know James Jean, the artist James Jean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I just visited him the other day. He's just signed in one day 6,000 posters. It's crazy.
God.
Wow.
And I saw a video of him. He was really doing every single one. I mean, he had an assistant pulling them away, each one he signed, but it took him the whole day to do 6,000. So
yeah, I once did 1,000 and it was exhausting. So I don't know, 6,000. I don't know how he does that.
He looked like he went to his happy place and just like.
So you need an assistant though, right? Does he have an assistant?
Yeah, he had an assistant to pull it away. So all he did was keep his hand in the same spot, and then they pull it away, and he'd pull it away and write. Cool. It was like a very cool system that he had, but 6,000. That's a really
okay. When we go sign, I will pull away for you.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I feel like the problem, the legibility. I don't know what your signature looks like, Daniel, but I feel like it just gets a little lazier.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, I've done
5,000.
probably, I think 400 or 500 in a row, and it just got sloppier and sloppier as I got to like 300. It probably got sloppier and sloppier.
Yeah.
It's like trying to talk for like 4 hours straight. It's hard to do that.
It is hard to do that.
Yeah.
It's funny too with the digital edition, going back to the VV world. It's funny with like, I know a lot of people who are in the traditional comic book space are definitely kind of against like this sort of Web3 digital comic kind of thing. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like with this, like it actually kind of makes me get a little bit excited. Yeah, and then it feels like, oh, okay, if I have like EVERMIND, which is this sort of like dystopian future thing, and then I kind of read it in this space. I don't know. What do you think about this stuff?
Well, you can kind of see in the background when they're on the phone, it's just all black space. And that's a problem because where's their artwork? And the artwork they put on there are NFTs, right? And when it's time for that to happen, I'm ready to serve.
Yeah. I feel like that's not far off. Like I didn't understand Web3 for a long time until one day I was just watching my daughter play Minecraft and like the world she was creating, and like she was so into it, and like something really bad happened. It's like a kid that she was playing with accidentally invited some other kid in. This kid decided to destroy that world, and like my daughter's reaction to that was as if someone went into her room and like just stole everything from her room, right? So seeing how visceral that response was, I understood like what Web3 is about. So I get why you want to collect things to put in your virtual world, right? And why you want to have those things. It makes a lot of sense. And the art and all that stuff. And it makes a lot of sense. And if we're heading that way, and we are basically heading that way, I think it's going to be very important in the future.
Yeah.
But I'm still kind of old school. I like the physical comic book. I like the smell of it. I like touching like the difference between the glossy cover and the inside and all that kind of stuff. But I'm also kind of split because also I'm like a minimalist as well. So I don't like to have too much stuff. So I only collect the good ones, and then the ones I just read, I just keep them in PDF form.
Yeah. The tactile thing is sort of hard. I don't know if that's something that's just like intrinsic in like humans, this need to like actually have this sort of physical touch thing.
I think for a certain generation, for kids, maybe not. So much. Like for example, music now, right? Like I don't want the CD. I don't want those things. I don't want that box to have to put somewhere, right? So I have everything on Spotify, and if I really like the music, I buy the record and I play it on a record player, right? And so if you want that real visceral, warm tone and you really enjoy the music, then you actually buy a physical copy because there's a cover, there's the colored albums, kind of like a foil cover, I guess. And and all that stuff that you can actually enjoy it physically and have it. Then you put it on. There's a whole process of putting it on the record player, putting the needle on, all that stuff. So normally, if it's just music that I'm listening to consume, then it's on digital. But if it's something I really, really like and want to collect, then I have the album.
Right, right. Well, let me go back to this. I know I've been taking up some of your time. Might somewhat wind down soon, but I wanted to talk just a bit more about some of this foil stuff and these covers before we go. It's funny because there are some cool things here. I don't want to be too negative towards people putting out all this work. I think what I would like to see, and I don't know how you, Sean, feel about this, or even Daniel, like it feels like to me with all these kind of gimmicky things and foils and stuff, it feels like it wants to just sort of, all these things can be cool if used in service to sort of maybe the story or the art you're trying to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, I could see a world where if you wanted to put a Bobo on a cover and you wanted to have some spot metallic things to make that, metallic body feel like it was coming at you, a little more visceral, like that would be cool because it makes sense.
Well, you're doing it for the artistic reason. You're not doing it because it's a cash grab, right?
Yeah. I think that that's really what it is. I think that that's where so much of, the talk in the space is there's just there's just like, people are just allergic to this whole, like, you're saying the quiet part out loud. It just feels clearly like the cash grab.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that happens with almost everything, in that they're the initial people that start something and do something really cool. And then there's the bandwagoners that jump on that don't really understand it, but just do it because they think they understand it and it's a way to make money. I mean, the whole NFT thing that came and blew up so fast because there was some good stuff on the original. I mean, the first NFTs that came out. Then all these people came out, knew nothing about art, knew nothing about drawing or anything, and just put out all this garbage out there, right? And it just tanked the whole market and just made everyone run away from it. But it's because of all those bandwagoners that jumped on that don't really respect or appreciate what it's all about, that messed it all up for everybody. And I feel like this foil thing is the same thing. It's like there were probably really good intentions with the first, several of them or a few of them that came out, and then everyone saw that and go, oh, you can make money with that. Let's just foil everything then.
Yeah.
And that's clearly what happened.
Is it kind of like, it's almost like what's your thoughts, like with all like the superhero movies, like how popular they are? It's kind of the same thing. Like some of my favorite movies are like Dark Knight, the first Iron Man, like did such amazing jobs, like doing the superhero thing. And then it became like too popular for its own good, where maybe some of the people that were putting them out, like didn't quite understand what it was about them that was so loved.
Absolutely. And then like some of them were funny, and then all of them had to be funny after that, right? Like they had all this comedy in it. And to me, it was like, wait, that you have to do that with every single one, right? Yeah, Taika with Guardians of the Galaxy, that's his style, right? Yeah. But not everybody should be doing that same thing where you're making it all tongue in cheek and funny, right? Or like, Deadpool, the way they, Ryan Reynolds, only Ryan Reynolds can do it that way, right? And I mean, the comic written that way, but only Ryan Reynolds could do it that way. But everyone else wanted to try and make tongue in cheek, breaking the fourth wall type of thing after that. It's like, it should only be that one that's doing that, not everybody else.
Right. Or there should be like a purpose to it. It's like, like it made sense to do this like space opera, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, like James Gunn, where it's like super irreverent because we're in worlds that don't make sense. So everything just is kind of silly. But then it just, like you said, everything just became silly, like even on Earth.
Right.
There's a writing term called bathos or bathos, where it's just basically taking a very serious moment and making it funny. And it's a defense mechanism when you're making a big, profound movie like The Avengers. You do something very big, like you have a moment where a person comes up and says, like, I am, Thor. That's a very serious moment, but you never really know whether it goes over well because the audience can start laughing because it's trying to be too much, bigger than it is. So then you put a little humor in there where he dropped his hammer on his foot and then start jumping up and down. And that way you can kind of have a little safety in there. Say like, well, I never was trying to be serious in the first place. So
right. It's funny. It's like, I mean, I don't want to go to too much of rant town, but like to that point, I feel like one of the problems is, in my opinion too, is with all the sort of the like techs, speaking of dystopian future, with like tech's involvement in entertainment and stuff, like it's my opinion that I think that they look so much at metrics that it's hard to sort of quantify. Like I can't just say, hey, I think this would be a cool idea just because I, as a creative sensibility filmmaker, just understands that it would be good. Like I can't quantify that. So it's hard to sell that. So you have to be able to like articulate it in a very data-driven way. And I think that that's maybe one of the problems too, is that everything has to be sort of data-driven and best practices. And this shows this, therefore this is the creative solution for this.
I totally agree with you. I think that's the unfortunate thing about this kind of modern era right now, that it's all about data. And it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. It's through film, through sports, through car design. You know, like everyone knows I'm a car guy, right? Like I love 60s design, car design, because it was done by hand, and it was done by what you assumed would be fast, right? What you assumed is aerodynamically fast. Now it's computer driven, and so when you see like a hypercar now, it's crazy looking, but it's not romantic anymore. It doesn't. There's a lot of this romance, right? And I feel the same things happen with the film industry. It's like everything is done by a formula to try and make the most amount of money. So therefore, yeah, it might be good, but it loses this mystique, the romance to it. Like my favorite era of filmmaking is two eras: the 70s and the 90s, right?
Right.
The 70s is when, you know, Scorsese and all those guys came along to break out of that studio system of formulaic movies and making movies that were about, you know, the zeitgeist of America at the time, which was like, you know, wasn't great, and showing the reality of it. Then the 90s came with Tarantino and all that stuff, where you had a lot of independent movies, and people gambled on a lot of movies, but there was a lot of cool creative stuff coming out of that era. And now, like, unfortunately, like most of the movies now are very bland and boring. You know, they're formulaic, they're set up to sell merchandise, and have this long tail so you have like multiple, you know, a series of them, so that it can last forever and they can make more money. Or TV shows that I won't name the name of, but they've gone on for years and years and years. They're beating a dead horse. There's no more story to tell, and they're still doing it because, you know, it was once a popular show in the first season. You know, that happens all over the place, and it's like no one trusts authentic creativity anymore. And it's a sad thing. I think it's really sad. And so that's why I like what we're doing with this Kickstarter thing, is like we don't have to deal with any of that. We're doing what we want to do. We're telling a story that we want to tell, and there's no notes from, you know, the executives anywhere. There's no notes from anybody else, because it's a story we want to tell. And then, you know, with the proof is in the pudding, with Sean taking out and beta testing it with readers and getting their direct reaction to it, we're kind of circumventing the gatekeepers. I keep bringing up this topic, the gatekeepers, and showing that, hey, a good or cool original idea still can be successful these days.
Very much this project, EVERMIND, is kind of designed to be counter programming to a lot of what we see out there. And I guess even lately there's a lot of like superhero fatigue. There's a lot of stories that are kind of rehashed and live action remakes of animation that was successful in the past. So it starts to feed on itself. And I thought that there would be like a real need for a story that takes a big swing that's original and creative. And you take a risk with that. So you really have to back it up with good hardcore storytelling technique. And I think that's what we did. I mean, we did set out to do a little bit of counter programming. So I think when people read the book, they'll really see that it's something different and something special. So, you know, I hope people check it out. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, that's my thing, is like, again, I feel like it's all sort of linked and tied. Like, you know, we started the conversation joking about the foil stuff, and it's like, that's just sort of the path to least resistance when it comes to like, okay, well, what is going to sell, right? But the problem is that that's kind of what everything has gone, and everything is so data driven, and everything is like this is the way that we tell that things work. And you know, it's the same for the movies and things like that, and all these pain points that kind of exist in this pop culture space. But I'm hopeful that, you know, if people can just make creative projects and do stuff like this, and you can have a better relationship where it can be led with people who like you guys can lead with like your own sensibilities and just do it. And then you can take feedback of what people like and go from there, as opposed to like sourcing some marketing department of like, we find that these people like enjoy these things. So
Yeah,
therefore
we did this survey, and the survey says that we should
Yeah.
be doing this, like that. I hate that stuff. We
Yeah.
really hate all that.
it,
right?
and it's a problem because it's like, how are you measuring the data and stuff, where it's like, even
Well,
like,
and also as a creator, you're trying to change things and you're trying to make, lead, right? And you can't lead when someone's telling you that these are your limitations all the time, right?
yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it is hard. It's hard to do it. And the way that the way that a lot of stuff is measured now is, with like a click-through rate and watch time and things like that. And,
Mhm.
I don't know. To me, it's like high watch time doesn't mean necessarily good, because I can spend hours on TikTok watching, clip after clip, but that doesn't mean that I'm watching good art. Just to sort of
Yeah, I have friends that just turn stuff on and they're working and they're barely even watching anything. So it's not even indicative that they've even seen it, really.
Yeah. So it's kind of it's a weird sort of world we live in, and I don't know. We're in
Yeah.
this sort of
I just had an idea. We should do it's a multi-layer cover. It's a foil cover with a transparent cover. There's 2 layers, and then you have a scent card inside that smells like a mech.
yes.
It's the grease of a mech, and so then that set a new trend. And we'll get 2 zeros at the end of that.
All of the gimmicks. But if you do end up backing this book, I hope you actually open it. That's the key. That's the key with throwing in the PDF copy with a collector's copy. So therefore, like, you can read the PDF.
Oh man, I hope people read it, because that was where all the work was
Yeah.
done. I mean, Sean's work, all of us contributing to the story. I mean, that was the best part of making this thing. So if
Yeah.
people are
Well, that's why people get
bad.
people get the 2 copies. They get one to read and one to have in pristine condition on their shelf.
Yeah, this project has to do well for us because it's not making its way to Disney Plus, according to Gene Yang. Because
Not
we
with
might make it to HBO Max or something.
oh,
like
there
that.
you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
just anything outside of Disney, we might have luck there.
Not if you have Britneys like this, because I'm gonna see a Britney on this website soon.
Although I've seen a couple of darker things show up on Disney Plus recently that I've been like, whoa, that's interesting that they put that on there. So
Yeah, I think that Gene was talking about how it's very anti-Disney, the story.
yeah,
But
sure.
Yeah. Well, if anyone has any, questions for Sean and Daniel in the chat, or me too, I mean, while we're here hanging out, thanks so much for everybody hanging out. We had at one point, I think maybe 100 people at one point, and 75 people hanging out with us now. So it's good to just kick it and talk comic books. Or if you guys have more questions, if you guys want me to rant more about foils and stuff, I think I've said what I've said. I think I've made my peace with it.
do you still have the flamethrower?
No, I rented it. I was a poser, but I do have this clip that I can always. Maybe for Daniel, it's not that special because you actually have like cool martial arts footage of yourself.
There's some good stances there. I saw it.
Yeah, I channeled my inner Stallone.
I see some good ideas here. Scratch and sniff cover.
Yeah,
That'd be
glow
great.
in the dark.
Glow in the dark. Yeah, also great.
See, like a glow in the dark one, like there was one back in the day that had the character Ghost Rider, and his was glow in the dark, and it felt like, yeah, that's a thematic, fitting kind of thing.
Totally, completely. Someone's asking hear about my 90s comics. Okay, so I have this thing where I was not really into superheroes, and I still am not, because as a martial artist, I always loved watching kung fu movies where you saw the training montage, because it was aspirational. It was like, oh, if I train like that, then I can get those skills, right? So that bled into like the comics that I like to read. And so like Punisher was one. Even Batman I like more than, let's say, Superman, because he was a real dude that just happened to have all these gadgets that helped him do all that stuff, right? And then Punisher was like this crazy revenge story. let's see, we had Green Arrow, those ones, because he wasn't really a superhero. None of those were superheroes. And then even the Chinese comic books that I read, like Dragon Tiger Gate and all that stuff, they were, martial artists that did all these crazy training things to get to the powers they needed. So I always loved anything that had like an aspirational training thing in it. And then that even was in movies. Like nowadays, you don't see that at all anymore. And I have actually a theory about all this, is that why the kids these days and I'm sounding like an old man by saying kids these days, but with like the, social media, and you're always seeing a finished product, but you're never seeing the work it takes to get there, and then never seeing training montages in movies like Rocky, right? For example, Rocky's a good example. Like Rocky 3, when he's in Russia, he's running through the snow, carrying the big log on his shoulders and all that stuff. That's like stuff that's achievable and doable, right? Yeah. But like, being bit by a spider and then having these crazy superpowers, like that's like harder than winning the lottery, right? You can't be that, right? So I always gravitated to stuff that was realistic in some ways, or that I could relate to in that way, and not necessarily like superheroes with superpowers that could do crazy things that were bestowed upon them because they were otherworldly. Or even Iron Man. Like I did like Iron Man, but he's a billionaire, right? So he could afford to buy these things that made him that way, but I still related to him more so than, let's say, Superman or any of the other superhero with superpower stuff.
Yeah, definitely. The characters characters that have a little more agency over or control over what they achieve versus like, this thing happened to me, therefore now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Genesis Studios Comics, $4.99. Thank you. Appreciate that. He says, I bought the #1 issue of your book, Swaggle recently. Oh, thank you. Appreciate you. And I enjoyed Sean's comic work for a long time. Yeah. Well, Sean,
very cool.
Yeah, you've been doing it for a long time. How did you get into comics again? Or like, what was your, not getting into comics, but like, did you have the same thing, like growing up reading Marvel or DC characters, or any characters that you like?
Not at all. I never read the comics, strangely enough. I did like superheroes, because you can get superheroes through other than just comics, like they're on TV, like the Super Friends, and then also Spider-Man on the Electric Company. And then our family, we got the Washington Post, which is like really like literary important stuff, but then they have comics in there. So I got my share of comics. And then but when I wanted to start drawing comics, I was really inspired by Heavy Metal magazine. So my coming up was more like European style. So there's like Mobius and Milo Manero, stuff like that. So that's how I drew. And then that kind of kept me out of the American industry for a while, because I couldn't get that superhero dynamic, bombastic look. So that took a while, but so that was how I came up. And I had 3 very important mentors in Bob Layton, Barry Windsor Smith, and David Mazzucchelli, who all really taught me a lot about how to do the American superhero comics the way it's done here, and just been lather, rinse, repeat for 3 decades. So.
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting. It's the Heavy Metal magazines. That's where like all the best art went for a time. Like there was the Eerie magazines and Creepies, and Frank Frazetta was drawing in there.
Oh, Frank Frazetta, awesome, yeah.
Yeah, they just had the craziest like oil painting covers and all that. It was beautiful stuff.
Fire and Ice, I remember that movie.
Yeah.
I remember Heavy Metal. My mom would never let me get it, so I had to stand at the magazine rack at the grocery store and read it while she was grocery shopping, right? And then I have to put it back because like the covers were always not appropriate in some way.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually saw Heavy Metal magazine before I saw a comic book, because Heavy Metal magazine will be at the mall bookstore, and comics can only be got at the comic book specialty store. So
I got to shout out Dan right here. Dan is a great member of the community and comic book collector. And I didn't realize this. I can appreciate the martial arts perspective. It was a very long road becoming a black belt, currently 4th degree, an instructor for 15 years and counting.
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You guys want to spar?
What's going on with you, really quick, Daniel, with your martial art? I remember you asked Wesley that same sort of question. What's your martial arts life
So
like?
my background was Shaolin Kung Fu, and I started doing that when I was 12, I think. And I trained in that till my 20s. And then, but also at the same time, I started doing wushu around 16, 17, and I competed in that. And then I started the University of Oregon Wushu Club at the time, because when I went to University of Oregon, there was like judo and taekwondo and all those martial arts, but there was no Chinese martial arts. So I started the club there. When I was running that club, there were maybe two or three other universities like UC Berkeley and UCLA, and I think Cal Poly. We started the first collegiate wushu tournament at the time. And then I graduated and moved on to the film industry, where I was not able to practice wushu as I'd like, just because wushu requires a large space. So then I switched into other stuff. I went into Muay Thai, regular Western boxing, a little bit of jiu-jitsu, not too much. And then learned a bit of Taekwondo and all that kind of stuff. So that was my background. And then nowadays, I still train. After I turned 40, I made a commitment to myself. I was like, I gotta be committed to this and disciplined, because in my 20s, I could get away with like stepping away for a few months and then coming back, and stepping away for a few months and coming back. But after I turned 40, it's like, you can't do that, because once you step away from anything at that age, it's like starting all over again. So once I started into the Badlands when I was 39, and that kind of pushed me back into the martial arts world again and made me really dedicated towards it. And even when the show was done, I was like, okay, if I'm ever going to keep doing this, I got to keep doing it in my real life all the time. So I train 2 days a week in Muay Thai with a trainer one-on-one. And then every once in a while, I'll spar with group classes and stuff like that. And then right now, for my age, I'm 49 now. And so mobility, I realized, like, mobility, as you get older, mobility becomes the key of your life. So I've, been a martial artist for 30 something years now. And so I'm not trying to kick as hard as I can anymore, right? I'm not trying to do that kind of stuff. I can do that when I need to, but I'm not just going to do that every day. Like before, when I was in my 20s, like 100 kicks right leg, 100 kicks left leg, as much as possible, right? But there's a point in your life where your body starts to deteriorate. So I've done the opposite, which is now I do maybe 10 kicks, but super slow, right? Super slow, so that you have the full range of movement and you're engaging all the right muscles instead of just like swinging through it.
Right.
And then I work on a lot of mobility training. So the other days of the week, I work on mobility training, like whether it's yoga or animal flow or kettlebell work or things like that, functional strength training, to allow me to keep doing the martial arts, right? Because at a certain point, you crash. And then I'm also now revisiting the old traditional Kung Fu that I started with, because those are like thousands of years old systems, right? And the reason why they've existed over time is because they've been proven themselves. And in the world of like MMA and UFC now, like they make fun of traditional martial artists because they can't fight MMA, but they're not training that. What they're training is the long game. They're training. Look at a Kung Fu guy at 85 years old, and then look at a UFC guy at 85 years old, and see who's still standing and still can move and still can function, right?
Yeah.
And so now I'm looking back at my old traditional Shaolin forms and the basics and all that stuff that I learned before, and including like Qigong and Tai Chi and meditation and all that stuff, because that's a full, complete system. Whereas MMA is like, okay, we're going to take the best fighting techniques from all these different martial arts and slam it all together, but we're kind of only concentrating on the martial side, not the art side, right? And the art side is what's actually going to give you longevity and health and all that other kind of stuff. So although I do still train that way, I also concentrate on the stuff that's going to make me last longer, in life. I used to, when I was younger, like in Hong Kong especially, you would see these old Chinese ladies in the park at like 5 a.m. when I'd be coming home from a night out. They'd be in the park doing all this like
Tai Chi,
swinging and Tai Chi and all that, and I'd make fun of them, right? But now I realize like the importance of all that stuff. It's like I get why they're doing that, and then why they're going to live till like 100 years old, because they have that, and why they're still standing upright and not hunched over with a walker and all that kind of stuff. So I'm in that second half of my life now, and I really appreciate, the ancient arts now.
Yeah, it's funny. It is something you said. I'm just like, that's so true. Where it's like, I don't know, the older you get, the more you start to like think back on some of like, say the older sort of ways, whether it be in the martial arts or, even if you're not religious or anything, but like if you can take any religion of like Buddhism or whatever, Christianity or any sort of thing, and just be like, oh, some of these ideas make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Like maybe some of these people were onto something years and years and years ago.
Well, here's another aspect of life as a parent now. Like I find myself saying and doing things that my parents did to me, which I thought I would never do, but it just like comes out. But I see the logic in the clarity that my parents had at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, gentlemen, everyone in the chat, go support EVERMIND or go buy a foil comic book at New York Comic Con. I don't know. Buy whatever you want. I'm not here to tell you what to get. There's shiny.
Yeah, if anyone out there is going to be at New York Comic Con, come by and see Sean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be there.
Definitely go say a hi to him. Gentlemen, thanks again for hanging out. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much for hanging out. I think I've taken up a good amount of these guys' time. Sean, you're going to be at New York Comic Con. Where can people find you if they're there?
Well, you'll have to look for this shirt because I will not be tabling anywhere. I have a couple of panels, and then I'll be walking around with Carl and mostly hanging out in Artist Alley around. Look for the big line. That's where Peach Momoko is at the very front of it. That's where I'm going to be hanging out.
Very cool. And Daniel, what do you got coming up? Anything exciting?
I am
Anything you
about
need to promote?
to head off to China to do a movie.
Oh, cool.
That it's actually is interesting because the past few years have been really weird with COVID and the strike.
Yeah.
So like right before COVID, I just finished Into the Badlands. I was physically wrecked from that, so I needed some time to recover. So I took 8 months off, and then right when I wanted to get back into work, COVID happened.
Yeah.
So then I ended up taking basically almost 2 years off, right? And then after I finished American Born Chinese, I was like, I'll take a few months off. And then the strike happened.
Right.
So I've been not working for 18 months, and I'm like eager to jump back into work. So obviously, my career started in Asia, and I'd like to go back there. I haven't been back since before COVID. So I would like to do a Chinese movie Chinese movie. And then I have another Hong Kong movie planned after that. So
nice. Yeah. While I have you, now that I'm here and we're live streaming, what's up with you returning as Ghoul Dan Ever?
Oh,
tell me about that.
I would love to, but I feel like that ship has sailed already. I think if they were going to do it, they would have done it a couple years ago, a few years ago. That was a really fun project to work on, just because first my wife was an avid Warcraft gamer, so I didn't play it, but I sat next to her for years watching her play it.
Right.
And that was the whole reason why I did the movie, because I told her, I was like, hey, I got this offer for Warcraft, and she's like, you're gonna do it, right? Like she forced me to do it basically. But it was a really cool experience working with great actors, and also the first time doing motion capture. So it was really cool. I mean, for most people that haven't seen it yet, you don't see my face in it. I'm completely a different character. I'm Gul'dan, an orc, an evil orc at that. And I would love to reprise that character. It was fun. It was so fun doing that. You could go really big and over the top and not feel foolish about it.
Yeah. As someone who it's like, I definitely a big fan of Warcraft. I mean, I love like the Frazetta fantasy and all that stuff. So I loved it. And I'm hoping maybe one day we'll see.
Maybe, hopefully. I don't know.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again for joining us, everyone in the chat. And thank you, Daniel and Sean, for hanging out tonight. And I think I'll just say good night to everybody out there. Thanks so much for hanging.
Thanks, guys.
Cool. It's a lot of fun. Thanks a lot. And see everyone later.